Well, hello, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Reading Michael Jackson. I am your host, Lena, and as always, I am so excited to be here with you today. I have to admit something. It's actually been a few weeks at this point since I recorded a new episode. This is largely because in the US, it is about midway through the spring semester for colleges and universities, and I am swamped. I'm swamped. It sucks and it's difficult because I have all this work to do. I'm behind on grading, I'm behind on planning and curriculum, I'm behind on writing, I'm behind on preparing different presentations and things I have to do up and coming in the next couple of months. But all I want to do is talk about Michael Jackson, which is very typical for me, of course. But I have not had much time for Michael or for this podcast. So I'm glad I'm ahead. I've created a big buffer of episodes so I don't lose track, but that buffer used to be a lot bigger. So I've got to record, and I'm really excited, honestly, to record because I've really missed it. I'm really excited about actually returning to this book again today. But because it's been a while, I feel a little bit out of practice. So hopefully this episode will come together in a beautiful way that will be enjoyable for all. One thing I did want to mention and request is that if you are listening to this on Spotify, if you're listening to this on Apple or on YouTube, please subscribe. Just subscribe or follow. I know on Spotify you can follow a show. I believe the same goes for Apple. I know the same goes for YouTube. Be sure to subscribe or follow. And if you feel comfortable, if you are happy with and enjoy the content of this podcast, please consider leaving a review or rating it in some way. It is really helpful and something I truly appreciate. I also recently discovered that on Spotify, you can actually leave comments on the different episodes. Who knew? So if you feel so inclined to leave a comment, I would love that. I've recently had a couple of people do so, and it was very exciting to me. So I would love to hear from you in some way or another about your thoughts on the pieces that I read in these episodes or anything else. So no pressure, but if you are listening and you enjoy the podcast, please do consider subscribing and leaving a review or rating the show in some way. It really does mean a lot to me, and I appreciate it. So with that said, I'd like to get right into Dancing the Dream in our continuation of this book. So we are now on page 50 of Dancing the Dream. And this week's reading is a short reflective piece, and it is accompanied by a beautiful drawing that really does highlight the way this piece makes me feel and the way this word makes me feel. So without further ado, this is one of Michael's short reflections from Dancing the Dream, and it is called Magic. Magic. My idea of magic doesn't have much to do with stage tricks and illusions. The whole world abounds in magic. When a whale plunges out of the sea like a newborn mountain, you gasp in unexpected delight. What magic! But a toddler who sees his first tadpole flashing in a mud puddle feels the same thrill. Wonder fills his heart because he has glimpsed for an instant the playfulness of life. When I see the clouds whisked away from a snow-capped peak, I feel like shouting, "Bravo!" Nature, the best of all magicians, has delivered another thrill. She has exposed the real illusion, our inability to be amazed by her wonders. Every time the sun rises, nature is repeating one command. Behold, her magic is infinitely lavish, And in return, all we have to do is appreciate it. What delight nature must feel when she makes stars out of swirling gas in empty space. She flings them like spangles from a velvet cape, a billion reasons for us to awaken in pure joy. When we open our hearts and appreciate all she has given us, nature finds her reward. The sound of applause rolls across the universe, and she bows. Well, this piece has me overwhelmed with things to say. I have so much flooding my mind. I struggle to know how to begin. Magic. Let's start there. Magic. Michael Jackson and magic are synonymous for me. As you know, at this point, I became a fan much later than most listening probably have. Not until I was an adult, not until a few years ago. And I often hear fans describe their love of Michael Jackson and describe who Michael Jackson was to them as children. And they say, as a child, Michael was magic to them. I've heard some people say he was like a superhero or some sort of magical creature or god or something, you know. And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? His art is filled with nods to magic. His music videos, short films, songs, his stage performances. He says in this piece that magic isn't magic tricks and illusions and things. But of course we know he loved those things too. But I mean, I hear this description of him all the time. And it's always from the perspective, or often from the perspective, that is, of people becoming fans when they were children and seeing him in this light. And what's really incredible about that to me is that I didn't become a fan until so much later, and yet I feel the exact same way about him and about his work. This is really notable to me because Michael's appeal is cross-generational. If I were to go today to a Michael Jackson tribute concert, I've gone to a couple before. If I were to go today, I would see people of all ages, from 3 years old to 85 years old, or younger or older. But you would see this range of people. You'd see little kids dressed up in Smooth Criminal outfits and Thriller outfits and Beat It jackets and all these different things. And then you'd see their parents and grandparents knowing all the lyrics and enjoying all the songs just as much as they do. I can't think of any other artist that has such a cross-generational appeal. I believe one of the reasons for Michael's success and one of the reasons for this cross-generational appeal is that he is and was magic. He was magical to witness, to watch. I've enjoyed a lot of music over my life. I've been major fans of a few different artists before, but nothing and no one has affected me like Michael has. And it's the combination of everything. It's his actual performance art in the form of his music videos and the elements of transformation he incorporates that makes him feel and appear magical. It's the way he actually performs on stage, the illusions and things he of course works into it, the way he opens up every show with a kind of sense of magic and wonder. But it's also the way he performs, the way he moves is incomprehensible. The beauty of his voice is incomprehensible. I mean, to me personally, I've never heard anyone who sings like Michael. I've never heard a voice that I often joke with my husband. We'll listen to the song "There Must Be More to Life Than This" by Michael Jackson and Freddie Mercury. And I'll listen to this song. We'll listen to it all the time. And every time the song starts with Freddie Mercury, who's of course an amazing vocalist. But every time Michael's part comes up, which is the start of the second verse, I always describe it this way. But for me, it's like the heavens are parting every time I hear his voice, because it's just in this part, his voice is so beautiful and resonant and angelic, and it's magical. And this is what I'm talking about. There is a magic to Michael Jackson's appeal as a public figure. There's something inherent, his passion, his enthusiasm for life, for performance, for art, the purity of it. It radiates off of him, and it's a huge part of his charisma as an artist, is this magical association that I didn't have to be a child watching Moonwalker and seeing him transform. I didn't have to do that in order to feel that I was witnessing something magical when I watch him. I feel like that all the time when I watch him. And so there's this element of, I associate the word magic with Michael Jackson implicitly. But then there's Michael as a man, as a person, and I associate it with him too, outside of his performance self. And it's in part because of essays like this, where he dives into his appreciation of the world and the way he experiences it, not just as beauty, but as magic. I mean, what is magic? I'm thinking this now as I'm saying it. What is magic? How do we define the word magic if it's not just beauty and excitement? It's something more. I know that when asked, he described magic as wonderment also. And I think that's a beautiful descriptor. But I decided, just for fun, to look up the definition of magic. And the first definition that comes up says, the power of apparently influencing the course of events by using mysterious or supernatural forces. The second definition is something that is wonderful or exciting. I suppose then that we can look at both of those definitions as a foundation for how we think about this piece, and maybe even how we think about Michael. He's been described by many, by me, by many others, as otherworldly, as having this almost supernatural ability to affect people. If you've watched his live performances, which I assume most of you have, you can see this effect he has on people, the way they respond to him, the way I'm not just talking about the fainting, which is famous, of course. Everyone faints at his concerts. But I'm talking about the kind of collectivism that happens. A performance that immediately comes to mind for me is Michael performing Human Nature at the Wembley concert on the Bad Tour, because specifically the part where he brings in the audience to sing along with him, it is such a resounding chorus of voices, and it's all united under this one person. And there's something really incredible and magical about that. And it's not literally supernatural, but it does feel that way in some ways. And part of me wonders, does magic have to be supernatural, or is feeling that way enough? And also, who defines what is supernatural? Because if no one else has this effect, or very few others do, then there is something supernatural about it, isn't there? But then, of course, there's the wonder and exciting component of what magic is, and that, of course, applies to him as well. But I also think it applies to this essay, and the way this essay is read, and the way it's reading. He talks about how his idea of magic is about the world. He writes, "The whole world abounds in magic." And as soon as I read this line, I instantly recalled his Grammy Legend speech, which I know I referenced a few episodes ago in the children episode, when a lot of the piece seems to be almost word for word what he eventually spoke in that speech. There are several lines in this piece as well that are present there. One of them is, "The whole world abounds in magic." Now, what I love about this is that we always refer to the world as beautiful or peaceful or awe-inspiring. But not everyone calls that magic. But Michael's description of all things as magical, I think, is incredibly exciting, because there is something magical about watching the worlds dance in motion. He gives examples here of watching a whale plunge out of the sea. I imagine it spraying up into the air, and how delightful that is. He says we gasp. I love that he describes it as a newborn mountain. It's this unexpected peak that breaks the surface of the water, and it's thrilling. But then the next line I particularly love. He says, a toddler who sees his first tadpole flashing in mud puddles feels the same thrill. And I thought of a conversation I had recently where I was discussing how wonderful it would be for everyone to get to experience everything that happens to them as if it's the first time. And this brought me, of course, to the subject of children who have a small frame of reference, and therefore it's easier for children to appreciate life, to appreciate how exciting it is to see a tadpole, for example, to appreciate the taste of something new and to delight in that. I mean, it can be much easier to appreciate something when you're not comparing it to anything else. For how many adults would find it completely uninspiring to see a tadpole, but would, like Michael suggests here, really respond to the sight of a whale? And obviously it's in part because one is more common and we've seen it before, but it doesn't mean it's any less magical, you know? And I think that's a really interesting point here. It's about children, but it's also about perspective, and how I don't know that we have to lose that perspective. He says later that the only real illusion is that we aren't amazed by nature's wonders. And I think that's such an interesting line, that the illusion is our inability to be amazed, because we actually do have the ability to be amazed. I think that's the point. I love this line because he's not just saying, look at how flawed we are as people for not appreciating things. He's saying we're under this illusion that we're not amazed anymore, that it's not amazing anymore. And it is an illusion, because if you actually step back and consider what you're witnessing, when you consider the awe of what it is to be human on this earth and witness everything around us, to be a witness of everything around us, that is a magical thing. That is an awe-inspiring thing. But we live in this illusion of it's all normal, it's all regular, this is typical. And it's interesting because this morning I was feeling really kind of down, and I was journaling, and I journaled for pages and pages about my unhappiness. I mean, I'm not laughing about it, but I guess I'm just saying it's kind of funny to me now, because I ended with some reflection on gratitude. And I just wanted to see in that moment of where I was sitting, what could I access that I was grateful for? And what immediately came to mind was my open window and hearing the birds outside, and the warmth of my mug in my hand as I was drinking tea, and the sound of my dog scratching his ear, and the love I feel for him, and all of these things that are daily occurrences of me holding my mug in my hand and, you know, not really stopping to appreciate every day that this is a handmade mug. That is my favorite mug. And some person poured their creative energy into it. You know, it's easy to take it for granted, but it is an illusion, because the reality is if we just stop and take a breath, we can appreciate it again and we can see it again. And I think that's really the point of this piece. The point of this magic that he's referring to is that it's not just gone. It is an illusion that we can't access that still. And I love that because it's not cynical. It's not angry. It's not even judgmental. It's saying we are all enraptured in this illusion, and that we're able to get out of it and we're able to break free of it. And the only thing to do that is to appreciate it. He ends with this paragraph where he says, "What delight nature must feel when she makes stars out of swirling gas in empty space. when we open our hearts and appreciate all she has given us, the sound of applause rolls across the universe and she bows. Again, it's about opening our heart. It's about seeing what's truly there. If you think about the world in terms of filters, we have filters placed over everything all the time. And how we navigate the world and our own lives, in some ways, is based on the shade and tint of those filters and what those filters are allowing us to see and not see. You might almost think about these filters as screens. Like when you look out a screen window and it's mostly you can see straight through it, but if it's a really dirty screen or if it's a kind of broken screen, that changes what we view. And you don't quite like to take a picture through a screen, it takes away from the magic of it. It takes away from the beauty of what's outside. It's the same sort of thing where we have these screens, and depending on what they look like, depending on how clear they are, how open they are, depending on the tint they have, that changes our view of things, like looking through sunglasses, But maybe part of it is that when you open your heart, you're also removing a screen. When you see things as they truly are, they're magical. When you see something as it is, it's magical. Again, I think about Michael and my own response to him and how prior to becoming a fan of him, I to some degree saw him through the screens that others put before me. They shape the way I viewed him, but when you remove those and I can just see him and appreciate him, he's magical, There are a couple more things I want to reference before I conclude this episode. The first one, I mentioned this earlier. Michael accepted a Grammy Legend Award in 1993. This came up in a previous episode, and I wanted to reference it again here because several lines from that speech seem to come directly from this essay, which is very interesting to me because I don't know exactly when he wrote the pieces in the essay, but I do know they were written at least a year or two before that speech because of when they were published. And I want to let you hear just this part of the speech where Michael is talking. In the previous episode, I read it myself, but I want to let you hear Michael's voice saying this. So this is a brief clip where he uses some of the same language from this essay.
When I create my music, I feel like an instrument of nature. I wonder what delight nature must feel when we open our hearts and express our God-given talents. The sound of approval rolls across the universe, and the whole world abounds in magic. Wonder fills our hearts for what we have glimpsed for an instant, the playfulness of life.
Does this sound familiar? I mean, of course it does, right? He uses the language here again. What delight nature must feel when we open our hearts and express our God-given talents. In the essay, he says, what delight nature must feel, and we open our hearts and appreciate all she has given us. So these are two different ways in which we need to open our hearts, both to express our God-given talents and also to appreciate what's already here. In the speech, he says, the sound of approval rolls across the universe and the whole world abounds in magic. Here he says, the sound of applause rolls across the universe and she bows. He says the whole world abounds in magic in both of them. And in both of them, he references the playfulness of life. In the essay, he talks about it from the toddler perspective. And here he talks about it from the universal perspective, where for each one of us, when we express our talents, we allow a wonder to fill our heart, and we will glimpse the playfulness of life. And what this reminds me of, and all of this really makes me think about how Michael's perspective on life seemed to be that it was this current we can join and we can step into. I know he talks about that with music being like a river that you can step into, but it seems almost that life is that way for him too. That life is playful and gleeful, and there's wonderment and joy and magic, and we're allowed to be a part of all of it, but we have to actively choose to be. We have to actively open our hearts and actively step into beauty and joy and wonder. It won't just pass us by because we are in this illusion that we cannot see it, that it is not real, or that it is not magical, but that illusion can be lifted if we choose for it to be, that we are in this darker place, but we don't have to be. And I love the way he describes that the world, there's sounds of approval across the universe, or applause across the universe. It reminds me that there's all these universal forces, that there's this energy of life that is once witnessing all of us. And that when we get it, when it clicks and we reach into it and it gels, there is a sound of approval and there is an applause, and he is a part of that and we are a part of that. I find this incredibly exciting and very moving to hear from someone like Michael, who has spent his entire life performing. He spent his entire life seeking applause and seeking approval. But he describes this kind of applause and approval being the universe's to give us when we finally recognize all it has to offer. I think that's incredible. And maybe it's because on some level he heard that approval and that applause as a sign or as an understanding that he was living out what he was meant to, that his heart was open, and because he had tapped into that greater magic, he was being rewarded in his own way. And the final bit I'd like to leave you with is the 1983 Hayvenhurst interview that Michael gives. And I know I've referenced this before, and many of you, I'm sure, have watched it or had listened to it before. But in this interview, Michael is very young. This is after the release of Thriller, but before all of his Grammy wins and all of that. So it's kind of right there in the middle of his Thriller era of fame and the height of that. And he is filled with this innocence and spirit and joyfulness and playfulness. He's just being silly throughout so much of this interview. But he's also talking about magic. He talks about it so often throughout the interview and answers questions about what it means and what it is. And so I want to just play a little bit of that for you as well as we close, just to kind of leave Michael's words of magic as the final words in your ears for today. So I will end there, but I appreciate so much you tuning in again and for listening to me drone on and on about my love of Michael and his magic. And I'm sure we all think it and feel it in our own way, but it's something that I find incredibly joyful and delightful to talk about. So thank you all so much. I look forward to being with you again next week. And until then, see and enjoy and feel the magic all around you, because the whole world abounds in it, right? And that's all it's about. So take care.
And I like creating magic. Chasing on a cloud, soaring up so high. Watch me now. Watch me now. Come to Japan. I can do anything. So high. When I explain magic, I mean wonderment, excitement, the unexpected, escapism, creating something that's so incredible, an illusion. To put people in a situation, no matter what it may be, and give them totally the opposite or the unexpected, so much more than what they thought would happen. I mean, just blow their mind. I like creating magic. Excellence. I love doing that. There's nothing like it. I try to do it in everything I do. My God, it's dusk. The moon is out. Most beautiful part of the day. I can see some of the stars coming out. Very beautiful. Everything comes to life. The fireflies are in the trees, and everything's becoming magic. I would say it is my favorite part of the day, dawn and dusk. There's a certain magic about it. It does seem like everything that prey upon the night starts to come out, be it the creatures, be it the birds that return to their nests. I like dawn also. Some psychologists say that dusk, for a lot of creative people, you reach your alpha state subconsciously and you become more creative at certain parts of the day. But for me, it can be any time, you know. I just like creating. It's no special time, but this is really magic to me because it's like a painting. It's very artistic. It's magic. It's so wonderful.